Okay, and so to save some time for my video expert friend here, I've gone ahead and already pre-cut the cowl because this is a time-intensive process, fairly time-intensive process, because you want to make small cuts and small adjustments as you go. You don't want to end up cutting the hole too big because, as I say, you can always take more off, but you can't put more on. So what I did first, though, I'll show you, is I took the muffler off. So that way we've got only one obstruction to deal with at a time. So first I got the engine head out of the way, and then after I got that, I assembled the muffler and worked on that. So to start with, when I had the fresh cowl, this obviously was all covered up on the bottom here. When you go to place this on, you'll get about a ½ inch away from the back of the plane, or where the cowl is supposed to be placed before this starts hitting. And so I held that firmly up against there, and then I used a pencil to draw from the inside of the cowl here, marking a line around the perimeter of the engine, being as precise as I could. Okay, so when I drew my first line, because we could only get it about a ½ inch to where it was supposed to be, it was about a ½ inch short of where the cut was actually going to need to be made. But I went ahead and I started here and began drilling it out using a Dremel. Just take your time with that. It cuts through real nicely. Wear a mask, protect your lungs from the fiberglass, and do it outside if you can. And then once you make your first initial cut, you might find that the first time it's still bumping up against it on the side or in the front. It needs to keep coming forward and forward. So you simply just keep sanding out a little bit more with the Dremel. And then once you get it to the point where the cowl will slip all the way back to where it's supposed to be with the engine head in place, then you can go ahead and assemble the muffler. And I'll show you how I went about that. Okay, so on this next step, we've gone ahead and put the muffler back on using some cardstock or some fairly thick paper. So what you're going to do is take the cardstock or the thick piece of paper, place it so that it's going to be able to be taped back to the fuselage here and line up with the muffler. And just get it approximate. This does not have to be exact. All you want to do is kind of trace out a circle around the muffler hole. And then this is going to be your guide when you go to cut the cowl out, and I'll show you how. Okay, so now I cut the hole out of the template, and it's able to slide onto exactly where the muffler is. The other thing that I'm going to do is the cowl has a little bit of a flare here that goes below the fuselage. So the paper is only going to be able to really be taped onto the fuselage here and not over this section. So I'm going to go ahead and place this back on here to where I'll be able to tape it on this section. I'm going to mark off about here so that we'll be able to tape here, and then this will be able to come up around here. And I'm going to cut this off, and this will be our template. So now we have our template taped up onto the fuselage, and it's being self-supported. The engine was only temporarily screwed onto the mounts just to give an approximate guide. So now I'm going to take those top two bolts out. Okay, so now after I take this last bolt out, I can carefully remove the engine from the template, keeping it fairly in place. And then when I go to put the cowl on, the template will mark pretty closely where we need to start on our cowl, which right now it's hard to see from there, but it's pretty centered over where my current hole is. So you can see where the template is pretty centered to where my current hole is. Now, once I got the actual engine mounted on there and I got the cowl on and started enlarging the hole, it had to come out to the front and the side a little bit more. Also, this hole is probably going to be a little bit larger than just fitting around the muffler itself, because you're going to need the extra room to be able to slip the cowl on there, and I'll show you how in a second. Oh, real quick also you can see this small hole here I had to make. Once I got the hole proper for the exhaust pipe, and I began getting closer and closer, the cowl began hitting up front again, and so the front of the muffler began pressing up against the cowling, and I had to again, trace a little bit of a template around and just kind of make this crescent-shaped cutout for the front of the muffler. So the finished product will look something like this with a clearing for the engine head. You can go through and kind of smooth this out if you want. Again, the crescent shape for the front of the muffler cylinder, and then the hole for the exhaust pipe, which is a little larger than you would think you'd need because, again, you're going to need to maneuver it on there, and I'll show you in a second. The other thing is I'll probably end up opening up this some more. You do have an opening here. The fuselage will connect here, so this is all exit air space. But you want about 2 to 3 times the amount of incoming air. You want about 2 to 3 times the amount of exit holes as you have incoming air. And that will allow for proper cooling for the engine. The other thing that you can do is you can kind of block this off using some diverters, just some balsa wood, and direct the air down towards the engine head, reducing the intake space. But we'll probably end up enlarging this area down here somewhere to allow proper ventilation. To be able to get the cowl on there with this engine, the way that I'm going to start is by kind of almost having it face straight down to the ground, and then get it around the exhaust pipe first, and at the same time getting the engine shaft to slip just behind the cowl, and then tilting it about 45 degrees now in both directions, and slowly kind of bring it up. Now the exhaust is through the hole. The next step is to get the shaft through the center, and then push it straight back until it's on. Now you can see all our holes are perfectly centered. The cowl's able to be fairly easily gotten on and off.